The boardroom on the 48th floor of Genesis Holdings reeked of imported cologne and calculated power moves. Dayun sat at the head of the obsidian conference table, adjusting his platinum cufflinks, while Saren perched elegantly on the edge of his leather chair, her fingers tracing idle patterns on his shoulder, as she whispered something that made him smirk. They looked untouchable, a portrait of corporate royalty about to finalize the erasure of an inconvenient chapter. Then the double doors opened with a force that made everyone turn. Kamara walked in. Gone were the muted tones and shapeless dresses she once wore to appease his family. She stood there in a tailored crimson blazer that commanded attention, and secured against her chest in a fabric carrier was an infant, barely a month old. The quiet murmurs died instantly. Saren slid off the chair, her expression shifting from amusement to confusion to something darker. Dayan dropped the Mont Blanc pen he'd been holding, and it clattered across the polished floor, the sound amplifying in the sudden silence. Kamara stood there, her gaze locked on the man who had vanished from her life 11 months ago. "Whose child is that?" Dayan's voice came out unsteady, a crack in the armor his executives had never witnessed. "Who is that?" Kamara moved closer until she stood directly across from him. "This is Hadun, your son, Dayun, and he has your exact face." Dayun rose slowly, the color draining from his skin. "My son? You said you left. You disappeared." His hand reached toward the baby's tiny fist. Kamara stepped back sharply. "Don't you dare touch him. You chose your merger. You chose her. You gave up the right to hold him 11 months ago when you let your security drag me out." Saren grabbed Dayan's sleeve, her voice rising in pitch. "Dayan, look at me. Tell me this isn't real. Tell me she's lying." Dayan couldn't look at her. His eyes were fixed on the child. "Kamara, what have you done?" Kamara's smile was all edges, no warmth. "I did exactly what you wanted, Dayan. I disappeared. But now I'm here to make sure you understand what that cost." In that moment, as Dayun watched his carefully constructed world begin to crumble, only one question managed to surface through the chaos. How did I miss this? But to understand how a man can father a child he never knew existed, and to understand the dark machinery of a dynasty that tried to bury the truth, we need to rewind to where this all started. And trust me, what really happened will change everything you think you know about love and betrayal. Before I continue with this story that's about to shift your perspective on loyalty and survival, I need to talk to you directly for just a moment. If you've ever been dismissed because of who you are or where you come from, this story is for you. If you've ever given your heart to someone who wasn't brave enough to fight for you, this story is for you. Hit that like button right now. If you've ever endured something that should have destroyed you but somehow made it through, share this video with someone who needs to know that survival is possible. And subscribe to this channel, because what happens next is going to challenge everything you believe about forgiveness and redemption. Now let me take you back 2 years to the night Kamara met Dayun for the first time, because that's where this story actually begins. The place was a tucked-away live music venue in Itaewon called Blue Note Underground. It was the kind of establishment where the lighting was dim and the music was loud enough to drown out reality. Kamara Jenkins wasn't hunting for romance. She was hunting for creative fuel. She was 27. A brand strategist from Atlanta who had relocated to Seoul on scholarship and sheer determination. She was carving out a career for herself, one contract at a time, fighting to be seen for her ideas in a corporate landscape that often judged her hair texture and complexion before her portfolio. Tonight, she was celebrating securing her first major corporate client. She sat at the bar sipping whiskey, her foot tapping along to the jazz quartet. She didn't notice the man sitting 4 stools down. He wore a black snapback pulled low and an expensive but understated jacket. He'd been nursing the same untouched beer for 30 minutes. This was Kang Dian, the heir apparent to Genesis Group conglomerate. A man whose image graced advertisements across the peninsula, but who tonight desperately wanted anonymity. He was hiding from his security detail, from his father's expectations, from a life that felt more like an elegant cage than privilege. He glanced up and saw her. Kamara was laughing at something the bartender had said, a genuine sound that seemed to cut through the dimness. She looked radiant, completely herself. Everything he wasn't permitted to be. "Is this seat available?" Kamara asked, sliding down one stool because someone had knocked over a glass near her. Dayan startled. "No, go ahead." Kamara looked at him. Really looked. You look like you're hiding from the law or an angry ex. Which one? Dayoon almost smiled. Something worse. My mother. Kamara laughed again. Ah, the legendary Korean mother. I've heard the stories. Let me guess. She's trying to arrange your marriage? Dayoon nodded, taking a small sip. Exactly that. She wants me to marry someone I've met exactly twice because our families own companies that would make a beautiful merger on paper. Sounds incredibly romantic. About as romantic as a quarterly earnings report. Kamara turned her body toward him. I'm Kamara, by the way, and I think tonight you should rebel. Drink that beer. Talk to the random American woman. Disappoint your mother for one evening. The world will survive. Dayoon looked at her, and for the first time in years, he felt the constant tightness in his chest ease. I'm Dayoon, and you might be right. That night stretched until 4 a.m. They talked about everything except wealth. Kamara shared stories about Atlanta, about her grandmother who raised her, about the creative agency she dreamed of building. Dayoon talked about his secret love for design, a passion he'd abandoned to study economics for his father. He didn't tell her about the billions. He said he worked in family business management. Technically accurate, Kamara treated him like a regular person. She teased him about his formal posture. She challenged his taste in music. She insisted on splitting the bill. Dayoon was captivated. For the first time in his existence, someone was seeing him. Not the heir, not the fortune, not the future chairman, just him. They started seeing each other the very next day. It was intense, a secret refuge from reality. Dayoon would escape the executive towers in Gangnam to visit Kamara in her cramped studio apartment in Hongdae. The space was tiny, and the water heater barely worked, but Dayoon loved it there. It was the only place he felt real. Kamara introduced him to soul food and hot sauce. He introduced her to authentic Korean street markets and hidden mountain trails. They were happy, recklessly, impossibly happy. But secrets in Seoul have a short lifespan. 6 months in, Dayoon's security team tracked him down, or rather, they found her. Kamara was heading home from a client meeting when a black vehicle pulled alongside her. 2 men in dark suits emerged. They didn't physically touch her, but the threat was unmistakable. They handed her a manila envelope. Inside was cash, a substantial amount, and a note. Walk away from him. Kamara refused the cash. She brought the note straight to Dayoon. Who sent this? She demanded, throwing the envelope onto his bed. Dayoon looked at the wax seal and his expression went ashen. My mother. Kamara, I need to tell you something. That evening, Dayoon revealed everything. His real identity. The billions, Genesis Group, the crushing pressure. Kamara listened, arms folded. So you're basically royalty trapped in a tower, and the queen wants me gone. Essentially, yes. Kamara studied him. Do you want me gone? Never. Dayoon stood and took her hands. Kamara, I've never wanted anything the way I want you. I don't care about the corporation. I don't care about the inheritance. I'll walk away from all of it if necessary. Then prove it, Kamara said. Marry me? Not someday, no, now. They eloped 3 days later. A simple civil ceremony with 2 witnesses, Kamara's college roommate, and someone Dayoon knew from the music venue. No family, no media, just them. When Dayoon's parents discovered what happened, it was nuclear. The chairman threatened complete disinheritance. His mother screamed herself hoarse. How dare you? She hissed at Dayoon during a vicious confrontation at the family compound. How dare you bring a foreigner into this bloodline? A woman with no pedigree, no connections, and look at her skin. What will society think? Dayoon stood, gripping Kamara's hand. They'll think I married for love, something you and father have never understood. He walked out, pulling a frightened but proud Kamara with him. For a year, it actually worked. They lived in a high-rise apartment Dayoon purchased with funds separate from the family trust. Kamara's consulting practice flourished. Dayoon worked relentlessly at the company, trying to prove he could be both a worthy heir and a devoted husband. But pressure is like water. It always finds the weakness. And the weakness in their marriage was Seren. Seren was everything Kamara wasn't. Korean, wealthy, connected. Her father controlled a logistics empire that Genesis Group desperately needed to merge with to prevent a hostile acquisition. She was beautiful in a cold, manufactured way, and she'd wanted Dayoon since childhood. She entered the picture gradually, a business lunch here, a charity event there. Initially, Dayoon brought Kamara to these functions. But the stares, the whispered comments, The cutting remarks in Korean that people assumed Kamara couldn't comprehend wore them both down. Kamara stopped attending. "I'm exhausted from being examined like an exhibit," she told him one evening, kicking off her heels. "You go represent the company. I'll stay here and build my business." That was the fatal mistake, the crack that would become a chasm. With Kamara absent, Dayun was alone with Saren, and Saren was strategic. She didn't directly attack Kamara. She simply made herself essential. She assisted with the merger negotiations. She smoothed conflicts with the board. She became his consultant. She whispered poison disguised as concern. "Does Kamara truly understand the pressure you're under, Dian? Does she really belong in your world? It must be exhausting constantly explaining everything. You need someone who understands the weight of legacy." Dayun started arriving home late. He started smelling like expensive perfume. He became irritable, critical. "Why is the apartment disorganized? Why are you wearing that? Why can't you just be more?" He never completed the sentence, but Kamara understood. More Korean, more like Saren. Kamara fought for their marriage. She prepared his favorite dishes. She studied business Korean to impress his family. She dressed the part, but she could feel him drifting, being pulled by the current of his family's expectations. Then came March 16th. Kamara had been feeling strange for weeks, nauseous, constantly tired. She assumed it was stress from the deteriorating marriage. But that morning, staring at the test in their bathroom, she knew. 2 lines. She sat on the tile floor and wept. Not from fear, but from hope. This was it. This was a miracle. A baby, a bridge between their worlds. Diane adored children. He'd always talked about fatherhood, about breaking the cycle of emotional distance his own father had created. If he knew she was carrying his child, he'd wake from this trance. He'd choose them. She decided to surprise him. She left work early and drove to Genesis Group headquarters in Gangnam. She carried a small wrapped box containing the test and tiny baby booties she'd purchased. Her heart pounded as she took the private elevator to the 48th floor. She rehearsed her words. "Daeyeon, we're a family now, a real family." The elevator doors opened. The receptionist's desk was empty. The floor was eerily quiet. Kamara walked toward the glass-walled CEO's office. The blinds were normally closed, but today they were partially open, and there they were. Daeyeon sat on the edge of his massive desk. Saren stood between his legs, her hands resting intimately on his shoulders, her face inches from his. They were laughing. A soft, intimate sound that Kamara recognized because it used to be hers. Kamara froze. Her fingers crushed the gift box. She should have walked away. She should have left quietly. But she made a sound. A small gasp of pure heartbreak that carried through the silent corridor. Daeyeon looked up. Through the glass, their eyes locked. For 1 second, Kamara saw the man she married. She saw guilt. She saw panic. But then she saw Saren Tan smirk and whisper something in his ear. And the man she married disappeared. In his place stood the CEO, the heir, the coward. He didn't rush to the door. He didn't chase after her. He picked up his desk phone and pressed a button. Moments later, 2 security guards appeared from the stairwell. "Ma'am," one said emotionlessly. "Mr. Kang is in a private meeting. You're not authorized on this floor." Kamara looked at the guards, then back at her husband behind the glass. He'd turned away from her. He was staring out at the Seoul skyline, choosing the view over the sight of his wife breaking apart. "Authorized," Kamara whispered. "I'm his wife. Not according to our records, ma'am," the guard said gently, taking her elbow. "We've been instructed to escort you out. Please don't cause a scene." Kamara looked at the crushed gift box in her hands. She thought about hurling it at the glass. She thought about screaming until the windows cracked. But then she felt it, a flutter in her abdomen, a phantom sensation of the life growing inside. Stress would harm the baby. Screaming wouldn't change who he'd become. She pulled away from the guard. "Don't touch me," she said, her voice trembling but clear. "I can walk myself out." She turned and walked to the elevator. She didn't look back. She rode down 48 floors in silence, tears streaming down her face, landing on the tiny booties in the box. When she returned to the apartment, she packed 1 bag. Just essentials, her passport, her laptop, the photo of her grandmother. She was zipping the suitcase when someone knocked. It wasn't Daeyeon. It was a courier. He handed her a thick envelope. Kamara opened it. Divorce papers signed by Dian, dated that very morning. He planned this before she even arrived at his office. He'd already decided to end it. The grounds were listed as irreconcilable differences. A separate document was attached, a settlement offer. $3 million in exchange for her silence and immediate departure from Korea. Kamara laughed, a hollow, broken sound. $3 million. That was the price tag on her heart. She grabbed a pen from the counter. She crossed out the $3 million. She wrote one sentence in the margin. I don't want your blood money. Then she signed the divorce papers. She tried calling him one final time just to tell him, to give him one chance to be a father. She dialed his number. The number you have called is no longer in service. She tried his personal cell. Blocked. She tried messaging apps. Blocked. She tried the house phone. Disconnected. She sat on the floor of the empty apartment and understood the truth. He hadn't just divorced her. He'd erased her. He deleted her from his existence like a virus from a system. Her phone rang. Private number. Kamara answered, hoping desperately. Hello. It wasn't Dayun. It was his mother. Listen very carefully, you foolish girl. The older woman's voice was icing Carnett. You've signed the papers. Good. Now leave my country. If you attempt to contact my son again, if you try to create any scandal, I will ensure you never work in Asia again. I will destroy you. Do you understand? Kamara touched her stomach. She considered telling her. I'm carrying your grandchild, your legacy. But she remembered the way they looked at her, the way they called her outsider. If she revealed the pregnancy now, they wouldn't welcome the baby. They'd take him. They'd take her child and raise him in that cold, loveless mansion and pay her to vanish. I understand, Kamara said quietly. I'll disappear. You'll never hear from me again. She hung up. She blocked the number. She grabbed her suitcase and left the apartment, abandoning the settlement offer on the table beside her wedding ring. She went to the airport, but she didn't book a flight to Atlanta. She couldn't go home. Not yet. Going home meant admitting defeat. Going home meant she was just another woman played by a rich man. And Kamara Jenkins was not a victim. She was a survivor. She took a train to Busan, the port city in the south. She rented a modest studio near the water. It was affordable, drafty, and far beyond Genesis Group's reach. The next 9 months were brutal. She was isolated in a city where she knew no one. The morning sickness was violent. She spent entire days on the bathroom floor wishing her mother was alive, wishing her grandmother was there. But she forced herself up. She found remote freelance work using her maiden name. She worked from cafes, her growing belly hidden under oversized clothing. She attended medical appointments alone, struggling through the language barrier, trying to understand the ultrasound technician. Is the father coming? The nurse asked during the 20-week scan. Kamara looked at the screen, at the tiny profile of her son. No, she said. He's dead. To her, he was. The man she loved had died in that office in Gangnam. The man who remained was a stranger. She named him Hadun, a Korean name, because regardless of what his father did, the boy was half Korean, and she wouldn't deny him his heritage. He was born during a storm in November. Kamara screamed through labor, clutching the hand of a doula she'd hired. When he emerged screaming and perfect, the doctor placed him on her chest. He opened his eyes. They were dark, almost black. They were Dion's eyes. Kamara cried. She cried for the love she lost. She cried for the injustice, but mostly she cried with fierce protective love. I've got you, she whispered to the baby. I've got you, and you don't need him. We don't need him. For the first month, she existed in a haze of feeding schedules and sleepless nights. She was happy, exhausted but happy. She'd rebuilt her life. She was earning good income again. She had a healthy son. She was free. Then the letter arrived, forwarded from her old Seoul address, from Genesis Group's legal department, a summons. The divorce needed to be finalized in person. Dayan was remarrying Saren in 2 weeks, and they needed the final decree signed before a judge to ensure the assets were clear. The letter was arrogant. It assumed she was gone. It assumed she'd just sign remotely. But there was a clause. If she wanted to contest any aspect of the separation, she had to appear at headquarters Monday morning. Kamara looked at Hadun sleeping in his crib. She looked at the letter. She thought about the $3 million she'd rejected. She thought about Saren laughing in that office. She thought about Dayun choosing a merger over their marriage. He thinks I'm gone, she whispered. He thinks I'm broken. She stood and walked to the mirror. She looked at herself. She looked exhausted, yes, but she also looked powerful. She was a Jenkins woman, and Jenkins women didn't run. They didn't hide. She picked up her phone and called an attorney, a shark she'd researched who specialized in international family law. I need you to book me a ticket to Seoul, she said, and I need you to prepare paternity documents. Monday morning arrived. Kamara dressed Hadun in a soft blue onesie. She put on her crimson blazer, the one she'd bought with her own money from her first major contract after the separation. She secured the carrier to her chest. She looked like a warrior preparing for battle. She took the express train back to Seoul. The city looked identical, but she felt transformed. The skyscrapers of Gangnam didn't intimidate her anymore. They were just glass prisons. She walked into the Genesis Industries lobby. The receptionist looked up, startled to see a black woman with an infant walking with such purpose. "I'm here for the settlement meeting," Kamara said, sliding her identification across the desk. The receptionist typed something, her eyes widening. "Mrs. Kang." "Ms. Jenkins," Kamara corrected. "Is everyone present?" "Yes, ma'am." "They're waiting in conference room A." Kamara nodded. She walked to the elevators. The same elevators where she'd cried 11 months ago. This time she didn't cry. She watched the numbers climb. 10, 20, 30, 48. The doors opened. The corridor was silent. She could hear voices from the conference room. A woman's laugh. "Saren?" Kamara took a deep breath. She touched Hadun's back. "Ready to meet your father?" she whispered. The baby slept on, unaware he was about to dismantle an empire. Kamara reached out and pushed the heavy doors open. The heavy doors swung wide, and the atmosphere in the room transformed instantly. Kamara walked in. She didn't hesitate. She didn't falter. The sound of her heels on the marble was the only noise in the cavernous space. Dayan looked up from his watch, irritated. He expected an attorney. He expected a formality. He didn't expect the ghost of his past to walk in looking more alive than he felt. And he certainly didn't expect the bundle against her chest. Kamara stopped at the foot of the conference table. She scanned the room, the designer suits, the imported water that cost more than groceries. And Saren, perched on Dayan's chair like royalty on a throne. "You're late," Saren snapped, her eyes narrowing. "We have a timeline, Kamara. Just sign the documents and return to America." Kamara ignored her. She kept her focus on Dayan. He'd frozen. His hand hovered over his pen. His face, which had been bored moments ago, was now drained of blood. "Hello, Dayun," Kamara said. Her voice was steady, calm, dangerous. "Who is that?" Dayun asked, his voice barely audible. He pointed a shaking finger at the carrier. Kamara unbuckled the top of the carrier, revealing Hadun's face. The baby was awake now, blinking against the harsh conference room lights. He made a small sound and turned his head. "This is Hadun," Kamara said. "He's 4 weeks old and he's your son." The silence that followed could have crushed steel. Saren stood so abruptly she nearly toppled her chair. Her face twisted into horror. "That's a lie," she shrieked. "That's a lie, Dayan. She's trying to trap you. There is no baby. You told me you were careful." Dayun didn't respond. He stood slowly, pushing back his chair. He walked around the table, moving like someone in a dream. He stopped 3 feet from Kamara. He looked at the baby. He looked at the hair, the skin tone, but then he looked at the eyes. The shape, the darkness, the exact angle of the eyebrows. "My eyes," he breathed. "He has my eyes." "Yes," Kamara said. "And unfortunately your nose too." Dayun reached out. He wanted to touch the baby's cheek. He needed to confirm this was real, not a guilt-induced hallucination. Kamara stepped back, sharp, immediate. "Don't touch him," she said. Her voice cracked like a whip. Dayun flinched. "Kamara, is he truly mine?" Kamara laughed bitterly. She reached into her bag and pulled out a folder. She threw it onto the table. It slid across the polished surface and stopped in front of Saren. "Open it," Kamara commanded. Saren opened the folder with trembling hands. Inside was a paternity test. 99.9% match. Father Kang Dayun. Mother Kamara Jenkins. "This is impossible," Saren whispered. "You left. You vanished." "I was pregnant when I came to your office that day," Kamara said, looking at Dayun. "I came to tell you. I had the test in a gift box. I had baby shoes. But you were too occupied with her to see me. You had your guards remove me." Dayun felt the room tilt. He remembered that day. He remembered her face through the glass. He remembered the box she was holding. He thought it was a farewell gift, a desperate attempt to reconcile. "I didn't know," he stammered. "Kamara, I swear I didn't know." "Because you didn't want to know," Kamara cut him off. "You blocked my number, Dayun. You changed your email. Your mother called and told me to leave the country or she'd ruin me. She said you didn't want a mixed-race child. Was that true?" Dayun looked horrified. "My mother called you?" "Yes." "She told me the Kang bloodline couldn't be contaminated." Dayun turned to his attorneys. "Did you know about this? Did any of you know?" The lawyers looked down, shuffling papers. Mr. Kang, the chairman insisted all communications go through the family office. We were following protocol. Protocol? Diane roared. He grabbed a water glass and hurled it at the wall. It shattered, spraying the expensive carpet with glass and water. You kept my son from me because of protocol. Saren grabbed his arm. Daeyoon, stop. It doesn't matter. We have a merger. We have a wedding in 2 weeks. This changes nothing. We can compensate her. We can establish a trust. Just get her to sign the non-disclosure. Daeyoon looked at Saren. He looked at the woman he was supposed to marry. The woman who fit seamlessly into his world. And for the first time, he saw her clearly. He saw the coldness, the ambition, the complete absence of humanity. He pulled away from her. Don't touch me. Saren recoiled. What? You knew, Daeyoon said, his voice quiet but terrifying. You were there that day. You saw her. You told me she was just after money. Did you know she was pregnant? I suspected, Saren shrugged, trying to regain composure. She looked heavier. But what does it matter, Daeyoon? It's a baby, a complication. Can handle it with money. That's what we do. Daeyoon looked at Kamara. She stood there holding his son, looking like a queen who'd just conquered a kingdom. She looked exhausted, but she looked dignified. She looked like everything he'd thrown away. Get out, Daeyoon said to Saren. Excuse me? Get out. The wedding is canceled. The merger is canceled. Get out of my office before I have security remove you. Saren's face turned purple. You can't do this. My father will destroy you. The stock will crash. You'll lose everything. I've already lost everything, Daeyoon said, looking at Hadun. Now get out. Saren grabbed her bag. She glared at Kamara. You think you won? She spat. You just bought yourself a lifetime of misery. She stormed out, slamming the doors. The room was silent again. The attorneys were frantically messaging on their phones, probably alerting the chairman. Daeyoon ignored them. He looked at Kamara. Kamara, he said. I'm sorry. Kamara shook her head. Sorry doesn't pay for the nights I slept on floors. Sorry doesn't pay for the birth I went through alone. Sorry doesn't fix this, Daeyoon. I know. What do you want? Money? Shares? Give you anything. I want a divorce, Kamara said, and I want sole custody. You can have visitation, but only on my terms. No nannies, no drivers, no mother. If you want to see him, you come to me. You come to my apartment. You learn to change diapers. You learn to be a father, not a CEO. Daeyoon nodded. Done. Just like that? Just like that. Whatever you want. Kamara looked at him skeptically. She didn't trust him. Not yet. But she saw something in his eyes she hadn't seen in a long time. Genuine regret. Sign the papers, she said, gesturing to the divorce decree. Daeyoon sat down. He picked up the pen. He signed the documents. He handed them to the attorney. File them, he said. And tell my father I'm taking a leave of absence indefinitely. The attorney's jaw dropped. But sir, the board meeting? Cancel it. Daeyoon stirred. He walked to Kamara again. Can I see him closer? Kamara hesitated. Then she nodded. She turned slightly so he could see Hadun's face. Daeyoon leaned in. He smelled the baby powder and milk. He saw the tiny eyelashes. Hello, Hadun, he whispered. I'm your Appa. I'm so sorry I was late. The next 6 months were a collision of worlds. Daeyoon moved out of the family estate into a hotel near Kamara's apartment in Gangnam. He showed up every day at 6 sharp. He traded his Italian suits for jeans and casual shirts. It was a disaster initially. He didn't know how to hold an infant. He panicked when Hadun cried. He tried hiring a night nurse and Kamara fired her immediately. I said you do it, Kamara told him. Arms crossed. You want to bond with him, you do the work. So the billionaire learned. He learned that diaper rash cream is messy. He learned that babies spit up on cashmere as easily as cotton. He learned to sing terrible lullabies. He learned to cook soul food, though he burned it the first dozen times. His family went ballistic. The chairman froze his personal accounts. The board threatened to remove him. The media had a field day. The secret heir, the foreign ex-wife, the scandal of the decade. But Daeyoon didn't care. For the first time in his life, he was free. He spent his days in Kamara's small living room playing peekaboo. He watched Kamara work, finally seeing the brilliance he'd ignored. He fell in love with her again, harder this time, deeper. One rainy Wednesday, Kamara came down with the flu. She could barely move. Daehyun was there. He made her soup. He took Hadun for the night, pacing the hallway for hours to keep him quiet so she could rest. In the morning, Kamara woke to find Daeyoon asleep in the armchair. Hadun asleep on his chest. They looked identical. The same mouth, the same peaceful expression. Kamara felt the wall around her hard crack just slightly. "We need to talk," she said when he woke. Dayan rubbed his eyes. "Is he okay? Are you okay?" "We're fine. But this us, what are we doing, Dayan?" "You're the CEO of Genesis Group. You can't live in a hotel changing diapers forever. Eventually you have to return." "I don't want to return," Dayan said, sitting up. "Not if it means losing this. I talked to the board. I'm stepping down as CEO. I'll take a consultant role. Less power, less money, but more time." Kamara stared at him. "You'd give up the company?" "I already gave up the most important thing once. I won't do it again." "Kamara, I love you. I know I lost the right to say it, but I do. I love you more than the legacy, more than the approval of people who only love me for my position." He stood and walked to her. He didn't touch her. He just looked at her with complete vulnerability. "I'm asking for a chance. Not to be your husband again immediately, but to date you, to court you properly. No secrets, no hiding, just us." Kamara looked at him. She looked at the man who'd fought his family for her. The man who'd cleaned up vomit without complaint. The man who looked at their son like he was the only star in the sky. She thought about being a Jenkins woman. Jenkins women were strong, but they were also wise enough to recognize when someone had truly transformed. "Okay," she said softly. "One date," Kamara said, holding up a finger. "Dinner somewhere public. I'm done hiding, Dayan. If we do this, we do it in the open." "In the open," he promised. A year later, they celebrated Hejun's first birthday. It was a Deljanchi, a traditional Korean celebration. Kamara wore a beautiful hanbok in emerald and gold. Dayan wore a matching one. They rented a banquet hall at a hotel in Seoul. The press waited outside, but inside it was just loved ones. Kamara's friends from Atlanta flew in. Dayan's few genuine friends attended, and in the corner, looking uncomfortable but present, were Dayan's parents. They hadn't fully accepted it. They probably never would. But Dayan had given them an ultimatum. "Accept my family or lose your son and grandson forever." They chose to attend. It was a beginning. When it came time for the Daljabi, the ceremony where the baby chooses an item predicting his future, Hejun sat before the table. There was money, a stethoscope, a gavel, and a microphone. Hejun looked at all the items. He looked at the crowd. Then he looked at Dayan. He crawled past the money. He crawled past the gavel. He reached out and grabbed Dayan's hand. The room erupted in applause. Dayan picked him up, tears streaming down his face. Kamara laughed, leaning against Dayan's shoulder. "I think he chose love," she whispered. Dayan kissed her forehead. He chose the right thing, just like his father finally did. The dynasty was different now. It wasn't built on cold calculation or bloodline purity. It was built on a messy, complicated, beautiful truth. And as Kamara looked around the room, holding the hand of the man who had shattered her heart and then painstakingly rebuilt it, she knew one thing for certain. The best legacy is the one you create yourself, not the one handed to you. If you loved this story of redemption and second chances, hit that subscribe button right now. Share this with someone who needs to know that it's never too late to fix your mistakes if you're willing to do the work. Drop a comment below telling me what you would have done in Kamara's position. Would you have given him a second chance? And remember, love isn't about perfection. It's about showing up even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Because at the end of the day, the only currency that truly matters is the love we give and the family we choose to fight for. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.